The information is so good, it requires no expiration date. The Robert Scott Bell Show.
Got an email from Phil Pepin. He's a friend on Facebook and other things where you connect people of like mind, and whether it be the political realm or the healing realm, fundamentally it's the freedom realm, the health freedom that is so important to us all here on the Robert Scott Bell Show at Natural News and Natural News Radio. And Phil sent me this release of a position of someone running for Senate for on the federal level, but through the state, Texas, the Republic, I should say, really. And he wrote a barn burner of a couple of paragraphs on the issue of raw milk. That's where it started anyway. And since we've been covering that for a long time and more intensely, last week when I was up with the Raw Milk Freedom Riders, I thought, this would be a good time to spotlight a little political healing on the issue of raw milk and a few other things. His name is Glenn Addison. He's running in a primary, in the Republican primary, but sounds like a real constitutionally limited government guy, which I like. And I want to say hello to Glenn and see what's up on the raw milk issue. To start, Glenn Addison, welcome to the Robert Scott Bell Show.
Thank you, Robert. I'm honored to be with you today.
Well, it's good to have you on board here. And I see this, you start with your question, what other liberties will the feds take from us next? And I've often thought about this as, if I could go back in time to the time of the Founding Fathers, we're certain that they wrote the Constitution so that one day we could protect the American people from drinking raw milk.
Isn't it outrageous that we're even having to have this converation, Robert? I mean, it's
embarrassing, really.
50-year-old.
Yeah, you've been on this planet for 50 years now, and you're like, would you ever thought that 50 years I'm going to actually have to talk about the federal government banning raw milk? What is this?
Absolutely not. It's truly distressing, and it's just indicative of a trend, a frightening trend, Robert, that I view in this nation, and it's a trend that caused me to, as a common man, a small businessman, to say, you know what? I'm tired of holding my nose when I go to the voting booth and having to choose from among people that just want to continue doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And, and I've had enough of it. So at least in this particular race for United States Senate in Texas, the voters of this state will have an option to go with a true constitutionalist, somebody that believes that the Founding Fathers meant what they meant.
Yeah, no, that's nice to hear. I like to see people that are actually going to live it. Very few of them, as we know, actually do. And I think that was the spark plug that was the Tea Party movement. Now we see it from the left side of the political spectrum with Occupy Wall Street. I just had Tom Mullen on yesterday's show talking about the similarities if they would all get together and realize that government is actually the great danger, not the protector. Although it was designed to be the protector of liberty, it's become the usurper of that liberty.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, there's a reason, as you know, Robert, why the Constitution is such a small, very thin booklet. That is by design. I think that the American people are going to have to be reminded that in 1789, the states created the federal government, not the other way around.
Well, that is a good point. Also, the fact that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were written on, guess what? Hemp paper. Right. And they've outlawed that, too.
I know. Indeed. Phil Pepin was reminding me of that the other day when he and I were visiting.
Yeah, I know. This is an amazing thing where the federal government now sees fit to ban the plants of the creator. I mean, honestly, whether you like hemp or not, as Ron Paul has said, if you're really talking about hemp and you want to get high smoke in it, you'd have to make it as big as a telephone pole, so it's not an issue. But the fact that it could provide so much food, it doesn't require pesticides, it can be used to replace plastics and oil, it's a green fuel that is legitimate, and it's a nutritional source with essential fatty acids, and it's amazing. And yet, we're out of control here. Is it possible, Glenn, that, we've got Rand Paul in the Senate now he's saying how ridiculous it is up there. Could you add to the equation there and try to subtract from the government?
Well, I'll tell you what, Robert, if you look at this whole issue about raw milk, I mean, every one of the Founding Fathers drank it regularly. Can you imagine? They must be spinning in their graves at the fact that the federal government came in with guns almost blazing, certainly pointed and aimed at this poor Amish fellow. It is an outrage at the amount of not only what they did, but the amount of time that they planned this raid, the thousands of dollars that they spent planning it and conducting it, tens of thousands of dollars of armor that they rushed in with.
Yeah,
I mean, it is. When I first heard this, I thought, okay, where's the punchline? This got to be a joke, and of course, it was not a joke. It is simply an outrage. And it's just, once again, indicative of what we've got to do at the federal level to not only, I hate the word reform, we've got to repeal. That's the word that I use. And when I talk about, hear that word reform from some of my opponents, Robert, I will tell you that I liken it to taking one fang out of a poisonous snake's mouth and then saying, look here, we've reformed this snake. No, you haven't. That remaining fang can still kill you.
Yes, exactly. It was a very, no pun intended, but pointed reference there. Yeah.
Well, we've absolutely got to repeal agencies that are on this power trip and return those powers to the states. Then if the people of Texas decide that the legislature is against raw milk, then if they put up with that, that's one thing. But we have the right to fire them at the state level. Unfortunately, these idiots that rushed onto that Amish farm, we can't fire those people because they're not elected officials. But we can certainly, by transferring the powers back to the states, we can certainly fire state reps and state senators if they have enough nonsense to try to pull that in Texas.
We're talking to Glenn Addison right now, and I've got links up at the blog at robertscottbell.com. Citizen activists, people that are being inspired to run and reduce the role of government in our lives to restore liberty. Of course, Mike Adams and I have been talking about this on and off for a long time on this show, as well as what we've been writing about, that we really need to get the people that are just people and not corporatists and not locked into, let's say, some form of conflicts of interest, whether it be pharmaceutical, whether it be oil or other things, and really restore freedom. And you talk about not reforming, but repealing. You would also acknowledge then that the 10th Amendment the 10th Amendment, first and foremost, has been completely ignored as another thing to recognize that the states are superior to the federal government, as you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely, Robert. Let me just remind us of something that's very simple that it distresses me that I don't hear brought up often enough, even among people that love liberty like you and I. And that is the fact that, the Constitution was ratified in 1789. The 10th Amendment was brought into the picture in 1791, 2 years later. And these people that camp out on this so-called general welfare clause.
Oh, yeah.
All right, first of all, even if they want to camp out there, the 10th Amendment 2 years later nipped that hypothetical position in the bud. But yet we don't hear freedom-loving people take that angle. And so that's one of the reasons that I say we've simply got to go up there and repeal the federal legislation that brought these agencies and departments into existence. There can be no reform. There absolutely must only be repeal.
Yeah.
And so we've got to have people that will, you may remember about 15 years ago when Charlton Heston was the president of the National Rifle Association.
Yes.
Somebody asked him about taking his rifle. You remember what he said? You'll pry it, or they'll pry it from my cold, dead hands.
Right.
Well, I appreciate that fervency, that fire in the belly. We got to have people like that don't have special interest hooks in them to just get up there and get it done. And that's one of the reasons that I chose to run for the Senate, Robert, because as you know, in the Senate, one person can have a profound influence on national policy, whereas they cannot in the House of Representatives. You can look at Ron Paul as an example. The poor guy, I don't know how he's remained sane with all the mess he's had to put up with all these many years that he's been in Congress.
Yeah, well, it's taken him all of those 20 plus years there to finally, see the dents being made. And he's been as consistent as anybody I've ever met in my lifetime. And this is another thing, as you said, Rand Paul comes in the Senate and starts throwing a monkey wrench in things immediately. So that's a very good point. Another thing I saw the other night on Bill Maher, he has a show on HBO, and he's pretty far left. He claims sometimes to be more libertarian, but I doubt that. And he was interviewing, I think somebody maybe he had a senator on, but basically he was arguing that it's just unfair. It's ridiculous that New Hampshire can have 2 senators while California has only 2 senators. And he completely forgets the fact that the whole idea of the Senate was to represent the states. But of course, when we lost the, let's say, the state legislatures selecting the senators and went to a popular election, then the states pretty much lost standing. And this is another aspect of why the 10th Amendment is ignored.
Yes, I agree. And in fact, it's unfortunately, Robert, at the same time, we have so many people in power in our state legislatures that also are eaten up with, I guess corruption might be a little bit too strong, but not too far
Maybe
from
not.
it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that as a common man, I doubt seriously that they would consider somebody like me. My dad had a wrecking yard. One of my grandmothers grew up as a sharecropper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not elitist enough probably to be selected to represent my state, even though I love Texas very much.
Yeah.
I can see how if the legislature did control that decision making, that they would only choose among elitists. And that's very disturbing to me as well.
Now, as far as, moving forward in this process, getting the message out, we're part of the new media. Obviously, there's the old media that still probably a lot of people in Texas follow as well. To utilize the efficient means by which we can communicate this message, those that love liberty in this way. I mean, we've seen some successes. We've seen some crashes and burns as such.
Yes.
It's one thing in the business world to be successful, but politics is ugly.
Yes. And one of the things that sets me apart, Robert, that should draw some attention as the election nears, is the fact that I'm the only one of the 7 Republicans running that has, in the spirit of the Founding Fathers, pledged to serve only one 6-year term and then come back to my day job. I'm a funeral director. My wife and I own a couple of funeral homes and small cemeteries and a crematory. I will not sell my businesses. I will not buy real estate in Washington. The day that I take office, I will close my political campaign fund, because if you're not running for re-election, you don't need to keep taking the people's money.
Nice.
And so that sets me apart, because there are no hooks in me, Robert. I'm a true, independent, conservative-minded person that wants to get our Constitution restored and then come back to Texas to resume my day job.
Well, like the raw milk angle hooked me, and I had to talk to you because so few people really get that and are willing to stand up. And as you are, as I've talked to Ron Paul over the years and others, so I definitely want to know, what about your position on the FDA? I call them the Fear and Death Administration, by the way. I feel like they're doing way more harm than good, even though the theory is that some people still believe, they're protecting us. But I've squashed that long ago.
Yeah, once again, Robert, it is a clear violation of market. The market needs to be able to be at work, and the FDA stifles the market. I mean, you can look at the power of the pharmaceutical industry and see how manipulative that industry has been in our country. And it's quite worrisome that there's massive intervention at the federal level, because that is not the way the Founding Fathers envisioned. They envisioned the market taking care of things. And so pharmaceutical companies should be responsible enough to do their own research, and as they come up with a new drug, to test it, to make sure it is worthy to be introduced, and have enough confidence in their product to say, here we go, we've checked it out, and we want to offer this to the American people.
We'll stand behind it and won't go to the taxpayer for liability issues.
No, we shouldn't go to the taxpayer. The companies should be held liable if they dare to introduce something that they've not properly tested out, in my opinion.
Well, and that's what we don't have now, of course. That's the medical
That's what we don't have now. That's right. Yeah. But I'm saying that's what we need to transition to.
Yeah, no, I like that. I appreciate that very much. Now, one more question, since you're in the funeral home business. I've covered stories where over the years they've been saying that undertakers, if they still use the term, have been utilizing less and less formaldehyde embalming fluid because the people themselves have been embalming themselves with Twinkies and preservatives for their entire life. By the time they die, they don't decay like they used to.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with that, Robert. It's an old wives' tale.
It's a great one. I love the perspective on it, because people are eating too many preservatives.
I do think that some of the preservatives and all this processed food has perhaps sent some people to an early grave.
No doubt.
But certainly we have to use embalming fluid, no matter how they consumed or what they consumed prior to passing over. All
right, I just had to ask you, and I appreciate you being game for that. Glenn Addison, running for Senate. Like I said, if you're interested, especially in Texas, check him out. Seems like a really great guy, especially with the raw milk thing, which is a very fundamental freedom, and all of food freedom, farm freedom, all of that seems to be in alignment. I'd love to hear back from you as things progress to see if the message of liberty is getting through there in Texas. Could you represent them? It would be a wonderful thing to have the state have someone that wants to really limit government, not just pretend.
Thanks, Robert. Honored to be with you today, sir.
All right. I believe it's GlennAddison.com, and I have that linked up at RobertScadbell.com. We got a lot more healing to do on the show today, and we'll be right back with more of that.